She says, we need to analyze this. We need to analyze exactly what she says, because this is important, so that you understand what is really problematic even about this apology. Anti-Semitism is real, and I'm grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes. My intention is never to offend my constituents or Jewish Americans as a whole. We have to always be willing to step back and think through criticism, just as I expect people to hear me when others attack me for my identity. This is why I unequivocally apologize. At the same time, I reaffirm the problematic role of lobbyists in our politics, whether it be AIPAC, the NRA, or the fossil fuel industry. It's gone on too long, and we must be willing to address it. So a lot of people have responded to my article by saying that, oh, well, Ilhan apologized, but it wasn't a real apology, right? It wasn't a real apology. So we should not be too harsh on her. We should not be too hard on her for this apology that she made, for walking her statements back. This was just a strategic move. We have to be more forgiving. We have to appreciate what her initial stance was. And so this is the kind of defense that people are giving Ilhan. And I think it's misplaced. It's absolutely misplaced for us not to criticize her for this and to really, really denounce this kind of apology that she's given. And let me point out exactly what's so wrong about this apology. The thing is that the main issue here, as I mentioned, the main issue, the central issue is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic? That's what the whole debate is about. That's what the whole debate is about. And what did Ilhan say that is anti-Semitic? What justifies an apology? All she has done, okay, and I wouldn't even say that she's the loudest critic of Israel. She's just supporting BDS, or she's made statements that she supports BDS in the past. And this kind of criticism of AIPAC. That's all. What's anti-Semitic about that? The fact that she's being hammered for being anti-Semitic because of this kind of critical stance. Okay, again, this is how it's being framed by the other side. That, oh wow, she's so critical of Israel. Oh my God, she's the most critical fighter against Israel, as if, no, unfortunately not. At least we haven't seen yet. Wait till she has done something. Wait till she has voted on a series of legislation, especially legislation where she's going against her own party, against Israel. When she does that, okay, then you can praise her and say that, okay, wow, she's really doing something big here and we should give her props. She hasn't done anything of that nature that she deserves to be considered this champion for Palestinian rights. Like, why? Why are we thinking about it in those terms? Why should we accept the framing of people who think that, oh, just because you have made some supportive statement against BDS, oh, that means you're such a, aggressive critic and fighter against Israel? No, we don't accept that kind of framing of the entire issue. So then what she says here, we have to be always willing to step back and think through criticism, just as I expect people to hear me when others attack me for my identity. This is why I unequivocally apologize. It's interesting that she puts in terms of her identity, like, okay, people attack me for my identity, so I should be careful about criticizing Israel. People attack who's attacking your identity? Like, why is it about you? Why is it about your identity? Why not make it about, why couldn't she say something like, we have to be willing to look more closely when, for example, people defend the slaughter of Palestinians. We have to understand, we have to look more carefully when people justify Israeli aggression murder, genocide, occupation of Palestinians, that's where we need to really look more closely, and we have to understand, what are the deeper issues at play. So this was a lost opportunity for her, because she could have, fine, if she wanted to say, I apologize, okay, fine, you want to apologize, then at least redirect the conversation to some of the important things, that are the main things in this entire debate. The main things: Israel's occupation, Israel's genocide, Israel's carpet bombing, Israel's violation of international agreements and international human rights law. Bring the conversation to that. Bring the conversation to those issues. Don't make it about your identity, okay? Oh, my Muslim identity, which, by the way, I've already talked plenty about this. Muslim politicians invoking identity. Okay, it's your identity, but everything that you stand for, everything that you're calling for is contrary to Islam. So who cares? As a Muslim, why should I care? Okay, we don't share the same identity if you're calling for all of this nonsense constantly, defending. And that's why I point out in the article that I wrote today and published today on Muslim Skeptic, is that she's constantly defending transgender. She's defending transgender in the military. She's defending transgender cross-dressers wanting to be in certain kind of sports competitions. So this is what she's really made her mark on. If someone wants to say that Ilhan is a, proud, strong defender of cross-dressers and transgendered people, I would say, yeah, that's true. She's proved that. She's proved that over and over and over again. Every week she's tweeting. Every week she's making a statement supporting that. So yeah, she is a strong defender of trans people. She's going against her own party to make a statement for LGBT, for trans. She's going against her own Democratic Party for that. So yeah, I agree. She is a strong defender of that. Is she a strong defender of Palestine? Is she a strong defender of Palestinians? Is she a strong supporter of BDS? Yet to be seen, and it doesn't look good given the kind of concessions that she's giving already. So going back to this statement, her apology. At the same time, I reaffirm the problematic role of lobbyists in our politics, whether it be AIPAC, the NRA, or the fossil fuel industry. So some commentators criticizing me and attacking me said, look, her apology is a fake apology because she just reiterated that AIPAC is problematic. But see, this is why people are confused. That wasn't the central issue. That wasn't the central issue here. The central issue is criticism of Israel anti-Semitic. Okay? That's what's important here. Because if it is anti-Semitic, then no one can criticize Israel. No one can criticize Israel without being labeled as a bigot, without being labeled as racist, without being labeled as an anti-Semite. And that's actually the legislation that has passed the Senate, where the first bill in this term of Congress that the Senate has passed is to make supporting BDS essentially giving states the right to penalize people for supporting BDS. So this is the first bill that the Senate in this term of Congress has passed. And it's all about this issue, all about this central issue of criticizing Israel being anti-Semitic, because that's what the bill is being supported or being justified by through that line of reasoning. We have to make supporting BDS illegal because it's tantamount to bigotry. It's tantamount to anti-Semitism. That's why just like we have laws that penalize people for racism, anti-black racism, for example, or sexism, or any kind of bigotry, just like there are laws that are justified to prevent and curb racism, we have to have laws that curb anti-Semitism. And BDS is anti-Semitic. That's why we're justified in creating these laws, and that's why we're justified in going contrary to the First Amendment or freedom of speech. That's why it's justified, because that's the central issue. Criticizing Israel is anti-Semitism. So Ilhan, in this apology, concedes the whole debate. She concedes the entire issue. So that's what's so problematic about this apology. Okay, it wasn't about AIPAC having a role in politics, right? And the thing is that she mentions the NRA or the fossil fuel industry. There are plenty of people who will criticize the NRA's influence in American politics. There's plenty of people who are criticizing the fossil fuel industry's role in American politics. But are we allowed to criticize Israel's role in American politics? No, that's the difference. That's what distinguishes those AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, from those other interest groups. So she has conceded the entire conversation by acknowledging that she apologizes for criticizing Israel. That's the whole debate. That's the whole conversation. So this is disastrous. This is disastrous because it undermines everything else that she's been saying. Okay, so this is what has happened. I wrote this article published today on the whole fiasco. The other thing is that this is not the first time Ilhan has apologized. Okay, that's important. It's not the first time that she's apologizing. In fact, there's more egregious cases of her apologizing. So let me pull that up for you. All right. So this is a tweet that she made in 2012, and she got slammed for it recently. Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. Okay. What prompted this was Operation Pillars of Defense, where the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, was carpet bombing essentially Gaza, and there were about 200 Palestinian civilians who were murdered by Israel, by the IDF. And so she made this kind of statement. At the time, plenty of politicians, including Barack Obama, President Obama, were defending, quote unquote, Israel's right to defend itself. Israel was claiming that Hamas was sending rockets indiscriminately into Israeli territory. Later reports determined from human rights groups that that wasn't the case. There weren't any rockets. There wasn't a real threat to Israel by these rockets, let alone Israeli civilians. So this is the knee-jerk kind of excuse that Israel has for all of its genocidal acts, is this claim that Hamas is trying to wipe it off the map. But in reality, when actual human rights groups go, they don't see any evidence of this kind of threat that justifies carpet bombing and using white phosphorus, for example, illegal weapons of mass destruction against the poor Palestinian people. So Ilhan is reacting to this with the tweet. This came to light and she was slammed for being an anti-Semite because she criticized Israel. The same script, basically, the same script that we saw with her recent statements on AIPAC and so forth. And so what does Ilhan do? Does she say something principled like, well, look at what Israel is doing. You're criticizing me for my statements. Why don't we go back and look at what politicians were saying at that time? Let's scrutinize 2012 tweets and 2012 statements from politicians defending Israel, defending these genocidal acts by Israel. Why don't we look at those? Why don't we consider those kinds of statements? Instead of reorienting the conversation, instead of doing the smart thing, which is drawing people's attention to the real issues at hand and what is really taking place in terms of Israel's aggression and occupation and genocide, instead of transforming the conversation in that very simple way by standing by her own tweet. She just walks it back. She just walks it back and says, these were unfortunate words. So she was in an interview with Christiane Amanpour on CNN, and Amanpour calls her out on this tweet, and what does Ilhan do? She says, "Oh, I apologize. This is unfortunate words that just came to me," and basically she took them back. So Ilhan has a history. Ilhan has a history of apologizing and walking back statements when she gets criticized. And that tweet, what's so offensive about it? It's just a criticism of Israel's influence on American political discourse. If we can't acknowledge that, if we can't acknowledge such a simple thing, such a plain reality that everyone can see, and even Israel itself, commentators in Israel are aware of and write about within their Israeli newspapers and magazines and so forth, then we're in bad shape. If even that's not allowed, how can you fight against Israel's influence? How can you fight for Palestinian rights? How can you fight for your Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine if you're not even willing to do the minimal amount of just saying that this is wrong, what's happening? This is what Israel is doing is evil. You can't even say that. You can't even say that without apologizing. Right? This is the tweet. She apologized for this. That's sad. That's very sad that even a simple acknowledgement of reality, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim or non-Muslim. You can't even acknowledge reality without being blasted as being an anti-Semite. That's the central issue, that if she had stood her ground, okay, that would be something. That means she did the minimum amount of not selling out and basically not bowing her head to these Zionist lobbyists and so forth. If she did that. But she didn't do that. She did not do that. And the fact that Muslims will defend her, and some Muslims within the Muslim community will defend her and say that, oh, she's trying her best, and make all these kinds of excuses. This is not right. This is making matters worse. Okay? This is making matters 10 times worse. Because what is the message that we're sending? The message that we're sending when we defend Ilhan or we defend Rashida, when they put our interests, the Muslim community's interests, the Ummah's interests on the back burner, on the side, whenever they do this and we don't call them out for it, then that essentially rewards that kind of behavior. Basically, we're telling Ilhan that you can say whatever you want that's contrary to Islam, that's contrary to Muslim interests, that's contrary to the Ummah's interests. That's fine. We're still going to support you no matter what. We still have your back. We know in your heart of hearts what you really think. So we're going to take it easy on you, and we're not going to push back or criticize. You have our undying support. So this just conditions the politician. This conditions the politician to think, okay, when I say something that is contrary to Zionism and Israel, I get hammered. And I get blasted, so I better not say anything that makes those people upset. But if I say something that Muslims is contrary to Islam, or Muslims don't like, oh, well, Muslim community will still support me no matter what, so it's fine. It's fine. So we're training these Muslim politicians. We're training Ilhan, Rashida, Keith Ellison before her, Andre Carson before her. We're training these American Muslim politicians, also in the UK. Okay, in the UK, some of these politicians, we're training them to continue to violate our interests, to violate Islam, to violate the Ummah's interests. We're enabling them for that. We're enabling that kind of behavior. This is wrong. We have to call it out in the strongest terms. Look at other communities, okay? Look at the backlash, for example, that President Donald Trump received when he ended the government shutdown, and he essentially conceded to Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats on the issue of the wall, building the wall between the U.S. and Mexico. Look at the backlash. Look how angry some of these far-right, white supremacist, white nationalists, look how angry they were. Look at how they criticized and they attacked Donald Trump. And they said, you are sacrificing our interests for political expediency, and that is unacceptable. He got a ton of backlash. People were saying, forever Trumpers, the ones who were really supporting him through thick and thin, forever Trumpers were saying, this is just crosses the line. This crosses the line. This issue of the wall is so important. You cannot sacrifice this issue just for political expediency. So this is the reaction of that community, that group, to one of their most beloved politicians, Donald Trump. We see this with many communities, especially when it comes to Zionists. Look at how much backlash any politician, okay, who expresses any kind of view that even slightly deviates from the standard pro-Israel line, there is immediate backlash. When some of these politicians, during the worst bombings, for example, of Gaza, the worst bombings of Palestine, they'll say something like, oh, Israel has, maybe Israel should kind of tone it down a little bit. Like, that's the extent of their criticism. Like, maybe it's not such a good idea to bomb women and children and civilians. Like, maybe Israel should tone it down a little bit. Even that, like such tepid remarks critical of Israel, those people get slammed. Those people get slammed by Zionists. And what does that do? That has, for them, it has a positive effect. It has a positive effect. But Muslims, no. These American Muslims, not all Muslims, these American Muslims who are supporting Ilhan and Rashida and others, no matter what they say, this is what they're doing, right? They're training these Muslim politicians to go against or not to have any consideration for Muslim interests. So this is a big, 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 big problem. We're just shooting ourselves in the foot. Okay, so this hurts. This hurts. I can't understand like how Muslims can defend, some of the Muslims who are defending Ilhan on this. Like, doesn't it hurt? Isn't it painful to have like your issue, like this issue of Palestine, to constantly be hit over the head, like over and over and over again? Like, people are so beaten down that they see Ilhan as, wow, this amazing defender of Palestine. Oh, like is that how low our standards are? That's sad. That's very sad. And it speaks to the level of our psychology, like our psychological state. Anyway, it's very disappointing. I was very disappointed to see what Ilhan said and apologized in this way, but I was doubly disappointed to see Muslims defending her and saying that, oh wow, Daniel, don't be criticizing Ilhan, she's our hero. Yeah, what a joke.